And that should be popping up in just a minute. Here we go. Okay, and if everyone wouldn't mind staying muted throughout the presentation, again, we will absolutely, I promise, have time for Q&A. So at that point, you can then unmute and ask your questions aloud or type them in the chat. Excuse me. But just so we can kind of have clarity throughout the audio of the presentation, we just ask that everyone stay on mute. But again, welcome. My name is Alyssa Laskowski, and I'll be your host to walk you through today's presentation. So I work on SNHU's Career Services team, and I partnered with the STEM faculty and staff here joining us for this brief session. So let's go ahead and get started. And before we start, just want to talk quickly about access and accommodations. So your experience at SNHU is very important to us. It is our policy and practice to create an inclusive and accessible learning environment. If there are aspects of this presentation design and delivery that present barriers to accessibility, please notify the appropriate accessibility centers that are listed on this screen. Again, as I had said, this webinar is being recorded, so if you're not comfortable being on camera throughout the recording, you are welcome to turn your camera off. And again, we do ask that all attendees remain muted until the end or till the Q&A portion. And I'd like to take a moment to allow my co-presenters a chance to say hello. And of course, in the interim, please feel free to answer the prompt here that you see on the screen in the chat box just to say hi. So with that, Tyra, you can go ahead and go first.
Sure. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you and a wonderful group of panelists that have gone through similar or the same experience as you tonight. I'm an associate dean on our STEM team for Global Campus and our online programs. I oversee our environmental science program as well as our geosciences program, which we have representation from both programs tonight from our panelists. So excited to be here, excited to get started. And I will introduce Dr. Susan McKenzie.
Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here with you all tonight. I am Dr. Susan McKenzie, and I am a Senior Associate Dean. I oversee the programs of Math, Science, and Data Analytics. I'm thrilled to have you all here, and I am most excited about helping you to reach your final destination, which is a career path that you can be proud of that uses your degree. And Tyra, Alyssa, and I are here to help you along the way. I'm glad you're here this evening so that we can finally connect with you and make those connections. Welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sue. Appreciate that. All right, so just wanted to go over our agenda for this evening. So of course, we'll kick things off. We want to introduce you all to our amazing SNHU alumni who will be sharing with you tonight their insights and advice for all of you, followed by some career exploring resources for environmental science and geoscience majors. And then of course, we're going to wrap it up with some key takeaways and a very brief survey. So as I've said it already, this webinar is recorded, so you're not required to take any notes throughout the presentation, but I know I'm a big avid note taker, so if you want to take notes, you're welcome to, but definitely not required. To note, all attendees will actually receive a follow-up email after the presentation with any links to resources that we discussed today, as well as a link to that specific recording. And again, we will have time for Q&A. However, feel free throughout the entire course of the presentation to add any of your questions directly into the chat box, and my team and I, we will address them as we go. So without further ado, I will go ahead and turn things over to Tyra to introduce our wonderful SNHU alumni.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alyssa. So we have 5 excellent panelists with us today, all who have gone through a SNU experience, whether they are completed and working in the field or just about to approach graduation with their degree and are working in the field. So I'm going to introduce each one, and then we have a few questions that we will have them address and talk about their experiences. So first is Lucas Myers, who graduated as summa cum laude in the fall of 2020 with a bachelor's degree in geosciences and a minor in applied mathematics. Currently, Lucas is a data analyst and has worked as a junior GIS analyst and a lead GIS analyst with separate oil and gas companies. In his free time, Lucas enjoys spending time with his fiance, cats, gaming, and at the track karting. Next, we have Chris Oski, is currently employed as an environmental health and safety engineer 2 at SpaceX's rocket development facility in McGregor, Texas, where he manages multiple environmental health and safety programs and supports various teams on site. Over his 8 years in environmental health and safety, he has worked in various industries such as manufacturing, research and development, and aerospace. Chris graduated from SNHU in 2021 with a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science. Next, we have Lloyd Johnson. He is an Air Force veteran and former military contractor who worked as mission support in places like Kuwait, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Japan. His environmental science degree reflects his love of nature and the complexities of the biosphere. Lloyd was a transfer student to SNHU during his junior year. Many of the classes Lloyd took from that point to graduation were completed while he was in Afghanistan. Lloyd finished his final few classes after coming home, graduated with a bachelor's in environmental science, and was able to secure an internship with the United States Environmental Protection Agency. This internship later turned into a permanent position with the EPA, and he currently works as a life scientist in their water division. Next, we have Mariah Mitchell. She graduated in 2017 from the SNHU Manchester campus with a bachelor's degree in environmental science and a biology minor. Mariah always had a passion for science and wildlife. While Mariah was a student on campus, she started with a research project investigating fungus in amphibians and continued leading this ongoing research project with 2 professors after graduation. Mariah has worked part-time with the Merrimack County Conservation District since 2015, and in 2018, she transitioned from an intern to a full-time employee with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. Last but not least, we have Brittany Mathis. She is currently a senior SNHU, working towards both a bachelor's degree in environmental science and history. I saw someone in the chat who has a history minor, so I'm sure they will be able to have a great kind of fruitful conversation on how those things connect, how they're using it. Brittany currently works as a park guide at the Indiana Dunes National Park. So those are our 5 panelists. I see the chat is lighting up really well. Thank you so much for the questions. So we're going to start and have a facilitated discussion with a few questions, and then we'll be able to open it up for Q&A. And so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll make sure they get addressed as we go. So I'd like to start, we're going to start with Lucas. Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to SNHU?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, everybody. But what brought me over to SNHU was the need for flexibility. So I know a lot of people that go to SNHU are returning students trying to continue their education, finish a degree. That's exactly what I was doing and working full time. So for me, it was the need of an online program matching up with my love of geoscience and mathematics. And SNHU was the best option that I found. So yeah, it just fit really well with my career goals and what I needed at that time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lucas. The same question for you, Chris. What brought you to SNHU?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So what brought me to SNHU, it's a lot of what Lucas was kind of saying, where I found myself at a time where I was trying to find that next step in my career, and I was trying to juggle working full-time and needing to try to find a way to get a degree while also still having availability and time for my family and my social life. And SNHU really offered me that flexibility and capability to handle all those aspects of my life, where a brick and mortar sometimes can be a little more stringent on that, I guess. But yeah, it really helped me get to that next stop. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris. And Lloyd, what brought you to SNHU?
Yes, can everybody hear me?
Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. How's everybody doing? What brought me to SNHU is I went to New Hampshire to be with my partner that I met in Japan. And then I was originally at UNH, but I seen SNHU across the street. I was at UNH Manchester, and I got called out to go to back to Japan, and they didn't have a very flexible online program. So I knew SNHU did, so I called them up, got all my credits transferred, and I was able to continue classes online while I was in Japan. And then from there, I went directly to Afghanistan and was still able to continue classes from over there. So really, it was just a flexibility um, that got me there in the first place, and that also kept me staying until the end.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Mhm.
And Mariah, I know that you completed your degree on the physical campus. So why SNU?
So I ended up picking SNU because they were close to where I was at home, and that worked better for my lifestyle at the time. They also were able to offer me some really good scholarships that was very helpful. And at the campus level and also in some of the online classes, the numbers are really small. So you're a student and you can build those communications and connections with your teachers. And you aren't just a simple number like you are in like those large or larger study halls you get in other campuses. And I was able to build some really good relationships with a lot of the professors on campus. So that was able to help me make connections and grow my knowledge and um, skills while on campus that I was able to carry on after campus too.
Wonderful, wonderful. I have a feeling that networking is going to be a big takeaway from this discussion today. And Brittany, what brought you to SNHU?
So I actually went to a brick and mortar school first, and it did not work out very well for me. I actually have ADHD. So SNHU brings the flexibility of being able to do my homework and my classwork when I'm most focused during the day. Rather than sitting 3 hours in a classroom, I can get up every 15 minutes if I need to, walk around while I read, and then come back when I'm more focused. And looking around for an environmental science program, those are kind of hard to come by online. So I found SNHU along with a couple of other ones, and SNHU was the most affordable option for that degree that I could find. So there was a whole bunch of different elements that brought me to SNHU.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brittany. I really appreciate everyone's time being here today. We're going to dig a little bit deeper, and I do see some questions that are coming into the chat as well. So we'll start back at kind of square one with Lucas. Can you tell us about what your career journey has looked like and how you landed the job that you have now? And any sort of key takeaways of things that you learned along the way or the things that really, managed to make a difference as you were navigating those?
Yeah, so my pre-degree career was pretty long and winding and not exactly what I wanted. So that was a big driver of finishing my degree. But post-degree, while I was still in school, I had an internship as a very junior GIS specialist or intern. And then after that ended, I took a shot in the dark application for a company that was hiring a full-time GIS analyst, the junior GIS analyst. Figured what was the worst that could happen. They hired me while I was still in school. And then after I graduated, about a year and a half into that role, I was recruited and picked up as a lead GIS analyst for a separate oil and gas company. And then about a year later, I landed my current role as a data analyst. So it's been kind of a long and winding road, but the combination of the geoscience major and applied mathematics minors really set me up to build out my skill set and the career that I would like to have and kind of dreamed about when I was a kid.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a lot of changes in a very short time span. So kudos to you for kind of shifting gears.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about how you heard about those different positions in the different companies.
So as far as the internship went, I was just searching, I had searches set up for geoscience intern, GIS intern, geographic specialist, just kind of the main keywords in each field. And so I would get daily emails, from Indeed, LinkedIn. Those are the main two. And then a couple, like .gov job boards that would send me emails. So I'd just see them pop up, shoot off a quick application. And I'm based out of Houston, so we kind of have a lot of oil and gas down here. So I guess the field was kind of ripe for that, so it made it a little bit easier. But yeah, so the job boards, the first GIS role was through, I think it was a LinkedIn application. The lead GIS role I was recruited for via LinkedIn. So I guess kind of the moral of the story is have your LinkedIn profile set up and updated. You don't need to post a lot. Just make sure the information is there so people can stumble across it.
Absolutely. And I will be really honest, that's how we found a lot of you and what you were all doing. So that's really great advice, Lucas. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm curious as well as we kind of discuss a little bit about what each of your roles looks like now too, if you can kind of share like whether you work kind of fully remote or part-time remote, those kinds of details of like whether you're place-based. You know, I knew you work for a company in Houston, Lucas. Do you work fully like in office?
So currently it's a hybrid role. So I do 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, which I really enjoy. My junior GIS role was 4 days in office, one at home. Then when COVID hit, it was fully remote. My lead GIS role was fully in the office. So I've run the full gamut of, you know, remote work,
Combinations,
hybrid. Yeah. And so right now I'm kind of tied to a location. It's a fairly large company. So there is an option potentially down the road to work from one of the other satellite offices. But right now I'm tied to the Houston area.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Lucas. I really appreciate your explanation of all of that. And Chris, I'll ask you kind of a similar set of questions of what your career journey has really looked like and how did you land the job that you have now? What are some of the things that you've learned along the way?
Yeah. If I look back, I guess this career journey for me really started as a production worker at a factory. I graduated, it's pre-college. I graduated high school, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with my career in my life. During that time as a production worker, I ended up joining a confined space rescue team, a hazmat team, and first aid team. And that's really where I kind of dipped my feet into the environmental health and safety aspects of manufacturing. And it really showed me I could have, I guess, a greater sense of accomplishment because I get to help improve the lives of the fellow employees I worked with and help make sure the company's doing what it can to protect the environment. So after a couple of years of that, there was an opening at the factory for a tech level EHS person. I didn't get that one, unfortunately. And then another, I think, year later, that same position opened back up. So I applied again and I tried. And I was lucky. I got it that time around. I spent probably another 4 years or so with that company as a tech and just, doing a lot of the manual kind of stuff or waste or guarding, things like that. And then I kind of hit a roadblock where without that piece of paper or degree, I couldn't really advance myself with that company. So I took a risk. I tried avenues in the company, but then none of that worked out. And so I took a risk and said, after almost 10 years with being in that company, I decided to leave and go elsewhere. And so I got a EHS specialist position at a different factory, which actually worked out for me. It was a lot closer, gave me more responsibilities. It really helped be that kind of stepping stone in my science path and my science career. And then after about a year and a half, 2 years there, though, I just by chance had a engineering manager at that company say, "Hey, SpaceX is they're hiring a lot of people right now." Um, and I was like, "Yeah, but come on, what's the chances? That'll never be me." So, um, but it stood in my mind the whole time and my brain wouldn't let it go. So I ended up applying after probably a week later. And again, still that mentality of, yeah, it's not going to work. I'll get, thank you for applying, but it won't work out. But it was the opposite, and I really got lucky and fortunate with the opportunities, and managed to get an environmental health and safety engineer position at SpaceX, which is where I work currently. And yeah, just doing a bunch of different things. Yeah.
Any tips for the students that are currently pursuing their degrees?
Definitely LinkedIn. Continuing education for sure is a big piece. If it wasn't for when I applied to SpaceX, I did not have my bachelor's degree at that time, but I was very close. I think it was in 4 to 6 months, I'd say. So it became part of that hiring requirement for me. So continuing to push education and not give up on it was a huge factor for me. Otherwise, for me in my career, I would say community building, finding and building relationships with people. When I applied to my most recent job, I was still listing good supervisors and managers from when I was a production worker at the factory, not even necessarily environmental health and safety related, but having those relationships and those people that are willing to speak up and really put you on that pedestal can really make or break stuff. So that was a huge part for me.
Fantastic advice. Thank you so much, Chris. And Laward, would like to hear from you what your career journey has looked like and how you landed the job that you have now.
Yes, my career journey from the beginning started right after I graduated high school. I joined the Air Force, um, and was planning on doing a whole 20 years, retire. It didn't work out that way. Because I still wanted to go to school, but there was some issues with that. So to go to school while being active duty, it's always mission comes first. So I decided to do my 4, get out, and then continue with my education. Um, and I was I was always interested in science. So originally my major was in biology, and then I found out about an opportunity in Kuwait. So I jumped on that. It seemed like a good opportunity at the time. So I went out there to do a personal security detail, armed security, anti-terrorism, biometrics, um, and went out there and did that for about 3 years, and then came back, went back to school, found out about another opportunity in Afghanistan doing the same thing. So I went out there to do that as a career for several years. Went straight to Japan after that to do pretty much the same thing for a few years. And then came back, went to UNH, and then, like I said earlier, transferred to SNHU. And then from there, I started applying for internships. I was really applying mostly on USA Jobs, and I was just searching internships for the most part or beginner positions. And I literally applied over 100 places. Just put my resume out there. Was never getting any hits. And then finally got a few hits from the EPA for internship opportunity. It was 100% telework, so which made it easier because then I was able to apply for or be eligible for all the regions. Um, so I was located in New Hampshire, but I was able to get an internship in the Seattle, Washington area. So I did that for after I graduated. I did a summer internship with them, and after the summer, they didn't have any full time positions for me, but they did extend me to do part time. So I did that, and while I was part time, I was able to network with the other regions, to see if there were any permanent positions open. And I was able to get an interview with Region 1 over in the Boston office. Interviewed with them. They liked what I had to say, and they hired me on full time at the beginning of this year, in January 2022. They hired me full time as a life sciences in the water division, and been here ever since.
Fantastic. Fantastic. That's so great to hear, Lord.
Yep.
And it's such a good kind of tip of, cast a wide net as much as possible. And definitely the challenges with, USA jobs is you're competing with so many other people just be able to kind of persist and keep going and keep trying. So thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
We will move on next to Mariah. If you can tell us a little bit about your career journey, the things that you've learned along the way, and how you landed the job that you currently have.
Absolutely. So I graduated in 2017, but I started looking for internships and job opportunities back when I was a freshman in uh, early, like late 2014, early 2015, because I was able to squish my degree into 3 years. And because I didn't have really any connections in my life to anybody in the science fields, I kind of had to forge my own way and figure that out. So I always made connections with my professors, and I was talking with them about different things I could potentially do on campus. I worked with a professor on campus to create an independent research project studying chytrid fungus and amphibians in the state of New Hampshire. And through doing that project, I was able to open a lot of doors. And in 2015, I was contacted with Merrimack County Conservation District. They are based in Concord, New Hampshire. Through a scholarship that I was actually able to get from them, I had to send them my transcript to have the scholarship forms be completed. And they said that they liked my grades and they added internships. And I thought that was great. And from there, I actually emailed them several times because I had heard from them and they said a lot of nice things, but then I didn't hear anything back from them for a while. So I had to start what I still use and I call being politely pesty. You kind of have to follow up with them because they did extend that offer to me. So I would just follow up, every couple weeks or so, just saying like, hey, I just wanted to try and touch base about that offer you mentioned, hope everything's going well. If there's any opportunity to talk about it, I'd love to do that. And, when you have to do that, the worst case scenario is that they're going to say, unfortunately, we don't have anything available. Please stop contacting us. The best thing that'll happen is that they'll be like, oh yeah, so sorry about that delay for whatever reason. Let's definitely make contact to do that. So after reaching out to them and kind of politely pestering them to get back to me, the director at the conservation district said, oh yeah, come in for an interview. So then I just went in and she was like, yeah, you're already hired. Anybody who wants it that bad just gets it. So that was great. And I worked as intern there in the summers of 2015 and 2016. And then after I graduated in 2017, I moved into more of a part-time position with them. And that one's really a great job because it has a lot of flexibility in the time and what's allowed for my other schedules. And in 2017, I was able to get an internship with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. I was working doing wetlands assessments. And then in the summer of 2018, I was able to get an internship with the Aquatic Exotic Invasive Species Program, looking at all of the invasive milfoil plants and different kinds of invasives that are clogging up the New Hampshire waterways. Those are really great internships. They're able to get my foot in the door, get connected. And as the 2018 internship was coming to an end, I was lucky enough to have a part-time position that opened up with our rivers and lakes section. That position was not one of my favorites. There was a lot of administrative work to do and some issues with management and what was allowed to be able to happen for career growth in the position. But even though it was a job that I was happy to leave because it just wasn't working for me, I was able to get a lot of skills from it and make connections with people who I was able to then further my career with in the future. In March of 2020, right before everything got crazy in the world, I was able to go into a full-time position with the Hampshire Environmental Services, working with our emerging contaminants group. And I'm actually one of our samplers who are going around the state testing for PFAS compounds in well water. And I've been there with them since 2020. So that's been a lot of different work to go through, a lot of different departments, doing all the sampling, making the connection with homeowners, relaying information, creating educational materials, and trying to help our homeowners who might be affected by PFAS contaminants learn what to do, as the state itself is also learning what to do along with the rest of the country. And yeah, that's kind of what it is in a nutshell so far in terms of my employment.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mariah. Everyone has had such interesting journeys, and just those few moments that make a difference, and the few actions or the few connections that you're able to make with people, can really help to push that trajectory forward. I'm really excited to talk next to Brittany to hear kind of your entry point into the Park Service, and I know that we have somebody in the audience who is going for an environmental science degree with a history minor. So if you could talk to us a little bit about how those two passions combine and what you're hoping to do, I'd love to hear that.
Definitely. So before I went to school, I was a dog groomer for 7 years, and it just did so much damage on my body. I decided to go back to school and find something that I could do a little lower impact. So while I was enrolled, but it was unemployed, I actually got to do a lot of exploring into the Career Center for SNHU. They gave me some great advice on how to apply for my job. It was actually the Career Center later on that helped me pick my second major as well. So I made sure to use that resource a lot. When I was applying, I did a lot of volunteering too, just so I can get an idea of what kind of parks were in my area. We got a lot of state parks and nature preserves. So I applied to all of them, of course. And then I just made sure to make a lot of networking connections, a lot of experiences too, because that shows up a lot on your resume. My picture is actually me volunteering as a bander for the Salwood Owl project called OwlNet. I also do frog monitoring. So there's just that looks great on your resume. And then the most important thing that the Career Center told me was to make sure to use the key wording for your resume, especially with usajobs.gov, because it goes through a computer first and it is looking for those buzzwords. So you can just use as many of their words as possible. You can get through the computer and then get to a person for the hiring process. And that makes all the difference for getting through to usajobs.gov. But then I got to start in after I got hired during the pandemic of 2020 is when I started at the Park Service. I did a lot of work outside and in parking lots for my first 2 years, and just roving the park and doing contact with our visitors. That's when I discovered my interest in history and environmental science and how well those two topics go together in an urban park like the one I work at with a lot of history. So that's when I took on my second major. And since then, I have moved up to being an interpretive guide, and I actually lead a lot of our interpretive programs, both history and environmental science focused.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Brittany. That's wonderful for you to share. And again, kind of casting a wide net and tapping in. I'm sure Alyssa is ecstatic and over the moon to hear Career Services plugged there and how it has been able to help you both with choosing degrees as well as your employment. That's fantastic. So we do have a few questions from the audience. I want to make sure we have time for those. Let's see here. So wanted to open it up to all 5 panelists if you have thoughts and ideas that you'd like to share. And what does the future look like for this career field? The things that you are doing right now, are your industries hiring? You know, at what rates are they hiring? Who are they looking for? And what's been kind of your experience either with your colleagues or your management at your organization? Go ahead, Lucas. I see you go off mute.
Yeah, I guess I can answer the question from Matthew that he asked a little bit ago about kind of acquiring the workforce experience. Honestly, I wouldn't personally, I didn't have an issue landing a role in the field. What I focused on and what really helped me was my undergraduate thesis work. So picking an applicable thesis that's going to help you develop those very kind of specialized skills in the research, doing the work, and then presenting your thesis and writing it up was what honestly kind of drove my entrance into my career, because I was able to gain those real world skills that I ended up using daily at the start of my career. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about picking up a ton of stuff before you get into your coursework. Just make sure that you're staying on top of it and understanding how you can use what you're learning in a career field or a job application.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Lucas. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so I think one of the original questions was, how does this field kind of look for as far as finding jobs? Personally, I'd say it's a good time to be going for this kind of a field. I don't think I've ever necessarily found myself struggling to find potential opportunities to apply to. Not necessarily that I would get those opportunities, but they're out there. I feel like half that challenge was just to take that risk and apply. That was the biggest hurdle, I think, and what I find more than ever now that I'm kind of on the other side of my career, is half the people that probably looked at that posting probably didn't apply for one reason or another, some of which might just be they felt like they might be inadequate. Don't ever feel that way. Even if you don't necessarily meet those minimum requirements for a job, still apply for it. You never know. You'll still, a lot of times that's what I ran into in my path to where I'm at. And I still would end up getting phone calls or interviews, even though I technically didn't meet what they were quite looking for. Just always take that risk and that jump.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, I think that goes along with a few of the other questions as well. Yeah, Susan asks a great question. Worried that if I leave my job with seniority to go to a lower paying entry level job as a career changer, do I need to start at the bottom again? Anyone had any experience or worked closely with someone that can kind of speak to that?
Unfortunately, yes, you kind of have to start at the bottom because it's a new career path, you know. So it's just that's the risk that you have to take. And I know a lot of people don't have the means to be able to do that. So I'd say if you have a great support system that will be able to support you during that time in your new career change, then definitely I'd say it's worth it and go for it. There's a lot of opportunities out there right now in the environmental field, especially in government, with EPA in particular. Biden, I'm pretty sure everybody's heard about it, just proposed a new budget. It's $11.8 billion budget. So it's like a 20-something% increase in budget. So they're doing a lot of hiring right now. And so now is the best time to get permanent positions and also internships. And with as far as promotional, points, it's pretty quick. You start at the bottom, but you get promoted pretty quickly. So uh, I'd say it's worth the risk.
Thank you, Luard. Yeah, and I think too, taking inventory of skills that you already have available from a a seniority position, things that you can really leverage that are transferable. You're not going in with zero skills, and a lot of those things will work either if you're in an office setting or in, they want to really kind of quickly be promoted into a management position. It's a bit higher paying, and thinking about some of the skills that you're grabbing onto in your courses. I'm sure Mariah is chomping at the bit to share a little bit about the things that she was doing while she was in school that really could be used for marketability to get some of those higher paying positions early on.
Sorry, I didn't want to rush you or anything like that. I was also going to mention transferable skills are really big because from my experience, a lot of employers like to see that you have some kind of background to get you in the door. But a lot of what employers really like is if they can have somebody they don't have to hold their hand every step of the way to 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 learn different aspects of the job. So any kind of skills that you might be able to pick up on, I mean, simple customer service skills are huge in almost any industry, anything like that. I'd say also trying to find ways to get involved in small increments into avenues you're interested in. So you could try talking to a local wildlife facility or something like that if you wanted to get involved in any kind of wildlife job or something like that. Seeing if maybe they had an opportunity for you to volunteer or help out on like a bat survey or something like that. You can always reach out to them because not all opportunities are always made available on websites. It doesn't hurt to, reach out to places like, hey, I'm looking into different career avenues, and facilities like yours are really inspirational to me. Would I be able to maybe talk with a few people at your facility or be involved in some capacity? And it doesn't have to be hours and hours every week. You can kind of figure out what works for you. I was able to get my internships at the State Department because of the amphibian research that I did while on campus, because it was pretty much like a capstone project or a thesis, trying to create the project and do all the research, writing papers, things like that. So there's ways to kind of start getting involved in it, or you could look for like some small workshops or classes that might just be a couple hours randomly to get kind of like some small certifications or something like that for a lower cost. That can really help just get the employer's attention and help get you where you want to go. You don't also necessarily have to like start back at square one, especially depending on what kind of skills you can bring to the table. And making connections with people and talking to people in the places you want to go to can just help open up a lot of doors, or even just answer questions you might not even know you had.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Mariah. And a question just came through from Melissa. I want to point this probably to Chris in environmental health and safety. Melissa is a nurse, and she's curious if there's anything that she can combine with environmental science or close to it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen during my time a background in like nursing or medical, as well as having that in my environmental degree. You're already kind of hitting two of the three capstones or cornerstones of a EHS career. So that's definitely a huge leg up, and especially if you have experience or a good track record or a long history of that, it's already a lot that's going in your favor. Especially because some of that is not as well versed when it comes to some of the other people that might apply to similar positions. Yeah, 13 years. Yeah, that with an environmental degree, I don't think you should have too much trouble finding at least some sort of position in the EHS field.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think those fields go really well together, especially with any sort of like public health experience, being able to kind of market yourself. There'll be a lot of environmental scientists who come with some biology, but you've probably run the gambit on how certain things impact the human body. So yeah, those things are absolutely really well tied together. So great question, Melissa, and thank you for sharing. Matthew has a good question in the chat here. Working towards a BS in geosciences, but ultimate goal is to become a volcano specialist and major in thermodynamics. I like field science. What would be a good path for this career goal, or what type of work should I try to take on to guide myself toward my goals? From what little research I've done, becoming I'm not going to say that right. Volcano specialist is what I'm going to say. I don't trip over it. Is based more on experience and a culmination of knowledge from different science fields rather than a direct career field that you can work towards. I'd say, Matthew, we have a lot of great faculty members who work in geology and field science in some of those specialties. I'm curious. I know, Lucas, you have the geosciences background, so curious at what your experience has been, either, from the GIS perspective, or some of the other folks that you've worked with.
Yeah, so to kind of give a little bit more context, when I started college, I was at the Colorado School of Mines and their geophysics program. So by extension, I actually know a couple people that got into volcanology. It's been a long time since I talked to them, but what I would really recommend doing is get involved with, if your city has one, like a local geological society. I know down here in Houston we have one, and they do field sessions. So where they go look at faults, different like stratifications of sedimentary layers, things like that. So what I would do, get involved with the geological society, go on field sessions with them, understand what the field work actually is. And, like you're saying, you get involved with the faculty, just try to understand, and also just, go on LinkedIn and look up volcanologists and look at what their career path was. See if you can find any common themes with that and build those skills out. I know GIS and, mapping volcano plumes and like magma chambers and just risk to human settlements, like housing, population risks, environmental risk is a big part of it now. So make sure like GIS data analytics skills are up to par, understand the data that they want to see, like how to map slope angles, lava viscosity, flow rates, things like that, I think would all be very powerful tools to have in your tool belt working towards a role as a volcanologist. And also, go with the EPA, any environmental protection, look into cities and towns that are near volcanoes, because they're all going to have volcanologists on staff to do risk assessments and just monitoring. I hope that helped.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lucas. Other questions that I may have missed? I'm going to pass it back over to you, Alyssa, in case you've been really great with the chat.
Yeah, I think we've more or less tried to get to everybody. Again, feel free to keep those questions coming in if need be, because we definitely, now looking at the clock, it's about 7:20. So want to make sure we have the next 10 minutes to get through some of the rest of the presentation, which I think will help answer a lot of the questions that are coming through. But all of our guests who are here, you are welcome to continue to stay on for the next 10 minutes. Again, if you're looking in that chat box and you see an opportunity for you to give your own advice and answer some of the questions, feel free to do that. But we're going to go ahead and move on. Again, to kind of get through the end of the presentation, and again, hopefully most of the questions that are coming through we'll answer as we move along. But again, thank you so much for the opportunity for all of you to share your insights at this time. That was fabulous. I even learned a lot, so this is great. So again, now that we've, of course, had the chance to connect with, again, all of our wonderful guests and heard their thoughts and their ideas and their advice, let's move on to exploring careers for environmental science and geoscience majors. So of course, having a successful career While also, helping the environment may seem like a dream, but it's very possible. And science careers are in high demand as more people, more businesses begin to see the importance of conservation and sustainability. So, one area to kind of think about when you're starting your career exploration journey is the various types of industries that target students with your specific educational backgrounds and your specific skill sets. So, of course, as example you see here on the screen here, industries like government, consulting, nonprofits, oil and energy companies, they're often in the market to hire students with degrees in environmental science and geosciences. So a next step or piece of advice would be to research industries of interest to you to find out more about what it is that they specialize in. So for example, on the list on the side of popular companies, you might see this list and think to yourself, okay, well, what does a company like Tetra Tech do? What career opportunities are available in that specific organization? So after researching their website or just jumping on their LinkedIn page, you're going to find that Tetra Tech, they provide consulting, engineering, program management, construction management services in water, environment, infrastructure, resource management, as well as energy. And so as you keep researching, if you find that that is a company that really piques your interest, you're going to find that they hire various internship roles in energy and engineering, and that they also hire environmental scientist roles across the US, and they even have remote opportunities. So again, just using that as an example, take the leap of faith, find an organization or industry that interests you, and do a little bit of that digging. So again, additional strategy might be make yourself a cheat sheet, make yourself a list of the types of organizations that you think that you'd like to work for, save those career websites, and even better yet, sign up for career alerts so you can get those notifications via email. And even another strategy on top of that could be look up the profiles of folks on LinkedIn of current employees, or even better yet, alums who work at that organization like Tetra Tech. Connect with them, reach out to them, message them, and ask them questions. So it's important by investing time into researching industry types and organizations like the ones that are here on this list, you might find opportunities that you weren't even thinking about that are interesting to you. And so another helpful career exploration tip is to research specific specialties or occupations in the environmental science field. So jobs, as I said, in environmental science are much more in demand than ever due to the really increased increased effects of climate change that we've seen really kind of in the past decade. And so oftentimes it's assumed that if you graduate with an environmental science degree, well, gosh, you have to become an environmental scientist and that's it. However, becoming an environmental scientist is not the only environmental science career option, as you probably heard from all of our guests who are here this evening. Environmental science and geoscience students can work in a variety of specialty areas, including climate, energy, conservation, research, engineering, and there are a plethora more. So as you explore specialty areas in the field, it's helpful to understand maybe what each specialty means in terms of possible career paths for you. So just highlighted here on the screen are just a few examples of some of those top job roles and opportunities that might be worth exploring to you. So let's say, for example, if you have a strong interest in climate energy effects, then you may have a passion for researching and analyzing policy developments that are related to climate change. And so with that in mind, roles like being a climate advisor or a climate analyst could be a really great fit for you to explore. Or as another example, let's say you have a really strong passion for conservation. You may enjoy managing or improving, protecting natural resources without damaging the environment. And so that type of passion might lead you to explore roles like being a conservationist or maybe a conservation officer. Or maybe you just prefer environmental research where all you can think about day in and day out is conducting research, doing experiments, fieldwork tests to monitor the environment around you. If that's the case, then roles like maybe being an environmental engineer or environmental protection tech might be right up your alley. Or even so, you might be offered, an opportunity where you're really interested in providing expert assessments, giving advice, or providing advisory services for clients on matters that are pertaining to environmental and science issues. So that would be a perfect fit, for example, for anyone interested in being an environmental consultant or an environmental analyst. So again, one strategy to explore some of these specialties or some of these occupations might be for you to start with sites like ONET or Away2, which are some of the sites that we talked about in series 1 of this webinar, to help you plot out some of those potential career paths for yourself. So you can start by researching those specific job titles that really stand out or interest to you. You can review the types of roles, responsibilities, or skill sets that are often required for those types of positions. And then, of course, keep tabs on those specific opportunities and set yourself up for some career alerts for those job listings. And lastly, students should highly consider reviewing job boards and professional associations that are specific to your major. And let me tell you, there are plenty out there for environmental science and geoscience students. So rather than only focusing on some of the large job boards like LinkedIn and Indeed, which are still extremely helpful, another really good strategy where you could strongly improve the efficiency or effectiveness of your job or your internship search is by using some of these more niche job boards that are here on the screen. So these specialized kind of industry specific sites can help you better target opportunities that are, of course, more related to your major, your interests, and your passions. So we would suggest that you research and view and maybe save some of these job board sites for future career exploration as you start to navigate jobs and internships. And additionally, definitely looking to explore professional associations like the ones that are here on the screen. Not only could you potentially find job opportunities that are listed on their website, but it could also open doors to allow you to connect with other professional members, connect with other students and alumni, to learn about new opportunities, maybe attend events or conferences, or just learn new career resources. And as you continue your career exploration research, it's extremely important to consider the power of making connections. So tapping into connections and networking is essential since it will help you develop your skill sets. It's going to help you stay on top of industry trends, meet prospective employers, and gain access to necessary resources that hopefully will continue to foster your own career growth. So outlined here, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, what steps can I take? So here are a few. Connecting with SNHU alumni. Again, we have a plethora of folks here this evening. We highly encourage you to keep in contact with. Definitely attending career events so you can learn about new opportunities and make those important connections with employers, and use sites like LinkedIn and even SNHU Connect. So I wanted to wrap it up by watching this quick video of a recent campus SNHU student and learn how networking was the key ingredient helping her find a career. So let's go ahead and watch this video together.
Through my time at SNHU, I really learned the power of networking. I learned very early on that by joining clubs and reaching out to your advisors, you ultimately get connected with people and businesses in the real world. I found that just through talking to my career advisor, I was able to connect just from a recommendation from a professor who I didn't have or I didn't even know.
The way that Megan got connected to the job at Jellyfish is because I saw a posting on LinkedIn and shared that posting with several people here on LinkedIn also, and then several people posted it within the Career Center, and then somebody reached out to Megan. So it was a chain of networking.
So networking is a really important skill for our students because it's not what you know, it's who you know, and also who knows you. So that phrase has been true since I was a student, and really our students, if they reach out to their networks that they have now, which includes their own family and friends and their faculty here at SNHU, they will get connected to opportunities and learn a lot more stuff than they can ever do on their own. So I think one of the worst things you could do is actually do your job search by yourself. Use your network, talk to the people you know who want to help you.
I found that the process of finding a job was easier with the Career Center's help. Not only was I able to find a job through networking, which is most times easier than just cold calling or sending in your resume to random employers who may or may not know who you are, but it was much easier to network and give a personal introduction to someone who I will now be working for at Jellyfish.
The best way that a student can increase their confidence in networking skills is to just get out there and do it. Walk into a new event and just say, I want to walk out of here with meeting one new person. The next one you go into, I would walk out of here with knowing 3 new people. It's not about the collection of the business cards, it's actually getting to know people and finding out what they do and how you can help them.
Now that I've landed my job, I don't think I would have done anything differently. Working with my career advisor early on freshman year to now has been a great journey, and just because she was able to give me this one-off recommendation, I now have a full-time role right out of school, which is fantastic. So I think that throughout my time at SNHU, working with my career advisor, going to the career fairs, and ultimately developing my career path have all been beneficial and helped me get to my end goal.
Awesome. I love that video. Watched it like 100 times. And now for this last slide here, I'll turn it over to Sue.
Wow. I'm taken away by all the experience here in the room and all the networking going on. I did post my LinkedIn profile as well, and I expect to get an invitation to connect with all of you. I have a history of connections that is very wide and open, and my network is your network. Thank you, Alyssa. You've covered a lot in the presentation, so let's talk about the big highlights and next action steps. Things to think about right now in your career journey, no matter where you are, no matter where you're starting from. You can start by taking proactive steps now to get closer to your career goals. Here are some outline steps to consider, right? You could use sites like ONET to explore career occupations and specialties. You could research job boards and join professional associations. You can schedule an informational interview with our alumni presenters here today. You can join Handshake or research upcoming environmental science related career events and register to attend. And again, you don't have to do these all at once. Just pick 1 or 2 to get started. Maybe do 1 or 2 every month and then start doing them 1 or 2 every week until you find yourself in a pattern. The idea is to start with an action plan that fits your needs. And Alyssa, back to you.
Thank you, Sue. All right, with that, we're just 1 minute over. So I hope that's all right with everyone. But thank you all first and foremost so much for being here this evening or watching the session later on. We again really just appreciate your time. A special big shout out, big thanks to all of our guest speakers who are joining us this evening. As a quick reminder for those in the audience, this is just part 2 of our 3-part series. So again, we will be continuing this conversation together. So we do highly encourage you all to join us for the very last session. That will be taking place on Wednesday, January 18th. And you will be notified via email and through some of your class announcements shortly with links to register, more information about what the topic will be for that January 18th presentation. So stay tuned for that. And of course, we will be following up with all the attendees that are here this evening via email to share with you this presentation recording, any additional contact information like LinkedIn, links from all of our guest speakers today. We'll be sharing that out. And again, any of the resources we did talk about, you'll be able to have that information directly in an email. So be on the lookout for that. That may come in the next business day or 2. But with that, again, I know that we're well over time, so thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate everyone's time and all the engagement that's been in the chat. You all have been absolutely fabulous. And again, thank you all so much for your time this evening. With that, you're welcome to simply log off and leave. We do appreciate everyone being here. And if anything comes up, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, to Tyra or Sue. Happy to provide you any other additional information. But thank you all again so much for being here and to have a great rest of the evening. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you guys again so much for being here. Have a good night, everyone.